Hello and welcome to Let's Be Honest with Just Johnda. I'm your host, Just Johnda, and today's episode, I am super excited. I have been planning it for a week and teasing it a bit with you. So now we are going to get into what we do. We're going to talk about the mess. We're going to take a deep dive. We're going to talk about the law and add some other spice to it. So it is going to be a good time. And I am so excited to have everybody here with me as we jump into another episode of our new season. So you've seen the title, right? Trading that booger in. That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about situations where you might trade a booger in, why not, and some other mess. Now, where'd I get that from? For those of you who have been following pop culture a bit, you've heard the story. We are not going to dwell on it here. The story about the infamous dress that a certain pastor's wife wore to an event that caused such a big hullabaloo that it's been on all the blogs. They were even on the Tamron Hall show. And that pastor got up in the pulpit to defend his wife. And one of the things that he said during his rant was that some people were just mad because they don't have someone or something to that effect. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but that they're mad that they don't have a woman that looked like him, and that maybe if you don't like what you have, you need to trade that booger in and get you somebody better. Now, we can have a whole debate all day long about whether or not the pastor needs to be touting trading the booger in, because maybe that for better or for worse, if you subscribe to all that, for better, for worse, richer, for poorer, sickness and health, that could include when either party becomes a booger. I don't know. Or maybe they were already a booger and you married him. I don't know. But we're not going to get into that or the infamous dress. But that's where we came from. When I heard that, it inspired me because there's been a whole lot of boogering in the news. And especially with some celebrity couples, some major, some minor, but we're going to get into it. And we're also going to take one of our infamous deep dives for those of you who have been longtime listeners on one of the couples. So first, we are going to start with a couple that I would call our goofy boogers. So the goofy boogers for this one, and I know you're tired of me saying that, right? Okay, I'll try to tone it down. Well, not really. But our first couple is, who is it? It is Tommy Lee of Motley Crue and his maybe cheating, maybe not cheating, but certainly not so bright wife, Brittany Furlan. Now, a little bit of background for those of you who weren't 80s kids like me. Tommy Lee is one of the most, I would say, one of the most famous members of the rock band Motley Crue that has been around for a super long time. I'm sure they probably toured to make money. Like anybody else, but I mean, I became aware of them as a teenager, of course. And one of his most famous marriages that many of us remember was to actress Pamela Anderson in the 90s. I think they were married from like maybe 94 to 98. So Tommy Lee, who's now 63, married his current wife, Brittany Furlan. I think there's probably been some wives in between, but his current one, Brittany Furlan, who is 39, they've been married since 2019. So go with me, if you will, and imagine a wife going through the motions, the subterfuge, if there was any. Who knows how Tommy and Brittany get down, because we know how Tommy used to get down. Imagine going through the motions and all the things of cheating on your famous husband, only to get busted and find out it's a catfish. And this is why they fall into the category of goofies. So as the story goes, and there's a reason why, and I'll get to the punchline in a bit. The reason why I'm bringing this up now, because this all kind of blew up back in May of 2025, is, well, again, I'll get to that. Brittany was carrying on what she thought was some kind of an affair, or maybe it was leading up to an affair on Snapchat with a person who she believed to be Ronnie Radke. So for those who are not up on your current or recent rock bands or rock groups, whatever you want to call it, he is the front man for a group called Falling in Reverse. So as the story goes, Brittany was on Snapchat. They're going back and forth. They're doing what they do, or what she thought they were doing. I'm going to assume, as you know, logically, that they had not met up. Well, of course. And so Brittany got busted. So much so that Tommy even confronted who he believed to be Ronnie Radke via DM. And that's where the foolery really began. Radke was like, who the hell? What the hell? What are you talking about? I have not been talking to your wife. And I'm going to assume, being in the business, it's not like Radke didn't know who Tommy Lee was. Now, whether or not he knows about Brittany is neither here nor there. I keep up on these things, and I didn't pay attention to the fact to Brittany Furlan. I knew that he was married again, and I'd seen pictures of them, but her name, whatever. So anywho, he was like, Ronnie Radke was like, it's not me. Wasn't me. I wasn't in the shower. I wasn't on the sofa. I wasn't in the DMs. I wasn't on Snapchat. And in fact, upon me looking into this, Tommy, I found out that there's a bunch of Snapchat accounts set up in my name and Instagram and what have you. And people are doing all kinds of catfishing and affairs. Now, I've checked out Rodney. I mean, I guess he's all right for what it is. But who knew that there was a run on people using Rodney Radke as their pseudonym for catfishing and whatever else? I mean, maybe getting credit cards, but I don't know. Very strange. But it didn't stop there. Things continued to get weird because Tommy and Brittany allegedly still didn't quite accept that it was fake. Now, if I'm Brittany, I'm just going to take the L. I'm going to take the L and also try to convince my husband that none of this happened, or this is just some, I don't know, just I was fooling around with my girls and we decided to catfish somebody else. And it turns out our catfish was a catfish. I don't know, but it's very weird that she wouldn't let it go. Now, for Tommy's purposes, with him not believing Ronnie or Mr. Radke, we're going to call him Radke here, him not believing Mr. Radke, I guess I could let that slide a little bit, because at this point, Tommy feels like, if you're Tommy, you feel like you're being played. So you're probably not going to believe Brittany, who it was alleged at that time was living in a hotel. You're not going to believe Brittany, and you certainly aren't going to believe Radke, because you think that Radke's playing in your face, and Brittany, for obvious reasons, is lying. I mean, yeah, so it's weird, but for the one person, sort of understandable in terms of him saying, don't bullshit a bullshitter, because, we know Tommy was in these streets. So he's probably played in lots of other people's faces. So at any rate, each side was claiming that the other side was making the situation worse, and Radke was like, screw this. He went public. So this was published in magazines, Big People magazine, the whole 9 yards. And so, and of course, Radke at that point, between Tommy going public and Brittany playing, I don't know if she was just playing dumb or crazy, he just felt like, screw it, I'm going to blow it up. Well, this is why this is coming up now, because 8 months later, or nearly 8 months later, because remember, guys, this whole situation allegedly blew up in, well, it did blow up, not allegedly, it blew up in terms of us finding out about it in May of 2025. So now here we are in January of 2026, and on Tuesday the 6th of January, it was reported that Ronnie Radke filed a restraining order against Brittany. What? Are you kidding me? Yes, that happened. I'm not kidding you. He claims that Brittany has continued to harass him ever since the situation blew up last May. Yes, last May. So in his filing, he said that Brittany's behavior has actually gotten worse and things have escalated since he continued to ignore her messages. So I guess now she's got the right information for the right Ronnie Radke? I don't know. He further alleged that she has even driven to his home and sat outside and stared at him. He included screenshots, and he included screenshots from both Furlan and Lee. Another thing that he said she did, well, no, he said she drove up to his house and sat outside, but that she showed up to one of his med spa appointments and sat outside. Now, if that's true, that's even creepier, because how the hell do you know I've got a med spa appointment, which med spa I'm going to? So then that begs the question, are you following me? I mean, what's going on? Now, just as an aside, so that's where the situation is today. Now, as an aside, as someone who saw the infamous sex tape between Tommy and former wife Pamela Anderson, some of us, including the girlfriend's mine that I ran this story by, we were left to wonder, what exactly was the Radke catfish showing Brittany in those Snapchats? Because we saw the tape and Tommy had a piece of equipment, we won't say what it was, just that it wasn't his hand, that he used to assist in driving the boat. So what was Brittany looking for and what was Radke showing her? But then again, Tommy's 63 and he's done an awful lot of partying. So we're going to leave it there. But speaking of equipment, since we brought it up, let's jump into one of our messy boogers. Have you all heard of the former NFL player, Matt Kalil? He played for the Vikings, the Panthers, and finally the Texans. So he played from 2012 to 2019. From what I saw, researched, not a football aficionado. I watched the Super Bowl. I'll typically root for the underdog unless it's somebody I don't like. And I used to watch for the commercials. Commercials aren't good anymore. So basically halftime, like a lot of people. So you won't hear me here talking about sports unless there's some gossip or some cases involved. Anywho, back to the case, because this one is going to give us some messy boogers and some legal stuff. So, Matt Kalil, the NFL player, is headed back to court with his ex-wife. Now, he has been divorced from the ex-wife since 2022 and has since married someone else. Now, who is Matt's wife, you ask, and why he's taking her to court? Well, Matt is married to social media influencer and apparently, and she's pretty huge, Haley Kalil. And well, she was Haley Kalil when they were married, but at any rate, Haley Kalil is a model, social media influencer. She's also a former Miss Minnesota. Maybe that's why where he met her. He played for the Vikings. And she actually has a background as a scientist as well. So she's a bit of a girl Friday, but she's doing the whole social media thing. She has a huge platform, one that I know you all are going to help me achieve someday. But she has a huge platform, just her stats alone. 15.9 million followers on TikTok, with 2.2 billion likes, 9.3 million followers on Instagram, 8.7 million subscribers on YouTube, 1.6 million followers on Snapchat, and 1.3 million followers on Threads. So she is hugely popular. Got those stats from Women's Day, by the way. So she's got a huge following. So when stuff pops off and when she talks, people listen. And of course, when she goes on someone else's show of equal influence, they're going to have even more people listening. And that is part of the problem. So why is he suing her, you ask? Again, on November 4th, 2025, Haley collaborated with another popular social media personality. He's a popular streamer, Marlon31G, does a lot of streaming on Twitch, and he was actually doing a big a-thon, like I think it called a marathon or Marlon-a-thon, and he was going in different places around the country, and she actually did a stream with him and interview and the whole nine on November 4th. So what's going to happen when two big streamers get together? They're going to have a huge audience, and what they talk about, especially if it's salacious, is going to catch hold. And that is exactly what happened, because when she appeared on the show, she disclosed, now he makes some allegations that she publicly disclosed highly intimate and private facts about their sexual life. That's an allegation, but by any stretch of the imagination, the things that she said are things that anybody would consider to be highly intimate or private. It's just people may agree to disagree about its impact, because I have a feeling when I talk about what she said, there may be quite a few guys who would wish that someone was saying this about them. Apparently, Matt is not one of them. Specifically, she implied that the size of Matt's genitalia was a primary factor in them getting a divorce. And she went even further and claimed that the intercourse with him would leave her in tears. Now, some of the stuff that I'm going to get into now is directly from his filing, which he filed this case against her last week. So last week, it was big time for people suing people, because he did this in the first week of January as well. So I'm going to pull some pieces directly from the case, because as we've talked about before, we've got the smartest audience here. We're the funniest and we have the best time, and we're pretty damn cool, but we're also the smartest. So here's some of the things that directly from the court filing. So defendant, that's going to be Haley, because it's Matt that's suing. So we've got ex-husband suing ex-wife. He claimed that she talked about them having to get medical and therapeutic intervention. And there's quotes from the actual case in here as well, or from the actual interview as well. But long story short, she said that they had such problems because of the size of his member that she tried other means to make this work, including seeing a doctor. She claimed that their relationship was unhealthy, their sexual relationship was unhealthy due to the plaintiff's anatomy. And he said she presented private marital information for the entertainment of viewers. And of course it was. Of course it was. It was to make people laugh. It was to be more salacious. It was to get more listeners. And let's face it, even people who did not watch this stream and never heard of this stream know about it because this thing was everywhere. It made national news. I even remember hearing about it at the time. It was all over all the blogs. And of course, people were making lots of fun. And then you also have some people that go a little too far, but it was absolutely everywhere. He even had, his attorney even put screenshots of not only the things that, some of the things that were said during the interview, but some of the ignorant things that were posted by various commentators, things that were sent to him via DM and the like. She described their sex life as painful, impossible, and even went so far as to say that it was the real reason for the divorce, attributing the end of the, and I'm reading this from the case, attributing the end of the marriage to intimate physical details about him. Because long story short, she's like, yeah, my husband, you know, it was great and whatever. We may have had some problems, but the main one was because we couldn't get it in, literally. She even went so far as to compare it to 2, possibly even 3 Coke cans. He said that she joked with Garcia, that is Marlon, about the plaintiff's genitalia, encouraging laughter and comments from the live stream audience at his expense. And she also made a gesture with her arms for the viewers to see. And this is all on YouTube if anybody wants to go and see it and give them even more views. At some point, so I jumped ahead. She even described the issue as 2 Coke cans, maybe even a third, plainly alluding to his size. And you can imagine people didn't take this as seriously as he does, and a lot of people still don't. They're like, you know, especially from the male perspective, oh, shouldn't you be, you know, whatever. But imagine if a guy said that he had to divorce his wife because sleeping with her was like falling into a gaping hole. Let's just call it what it is. So I think if we put it into that perspective, you know, because I think if we talk about big boobs or whatever, nobody's going to care. So that's probably the closest to, I think, the way that Matt would see it. And certainly an example that if I were representing him, I would give to put it into perspective, to get it away from that, oh, it's no big deal type thing, because it's not, she is not only talking about it being big, but talking about it being big from the standpoint of it being a problem, even though most of the things that other people posted were kind of sort of in jest. But, you know, he's got a right to feel how he feels, especially when she's talking about him. He goes on to say that these statements involve deeply personal, sensitive information that the plaintiff reasonably expected would remain private and confidential. Certainly buy that, because again, we are not only talking about his physical anatomy, but what they may or may not have gone through during the course of their marriage, including talking about it even from a medical perspective or a counseling perspective. Following the live stream's publications, numerous national and international media outlets reported on it. Okay, so we talked about that. So the bottom line is he's saying that this conduct caused him substantial harm, and it caused substantial harm to his family, who he said has been forced to endure the ongoing public circulation of these degrading and deeply personal statements. Let's face it, we're not talking about his mother or his father or his sister or his brother. We're talking about the fact that his new wife, and of course, this is all alleged, this is my opinion. We're talking about the fact that his new wife is like, get that heifer. Because as the new wife, wouldn't you? I'm the new wife, and the ex-wife is out here capitalizing, getting streams, getting views, getting more money, talking about your yuck. Yeah, I get it. I get why this happened. Now it's wild, but again, we know why. Furthermore, he says the broad and continuing publicity generated by defendant's statement has interfered with plaintiff's personal and professional life and caused lasting damage to his dignity, peace of mind, and enjoyment of life. Again, not knocking any of the things that he's saying. He says, for instance, the wife began receiving numerous harassing and threatening direct messages and comments on plaintiff's business Instagram account and on his wife's personal Instagram account. I get the harassing because, if you're bothering me, you're harassing me. The threatening thing is weird. If that's happening, my God. I mean, I know we talk about these parasocial relationships, but that is weird. If it's an exaggeration of what she received, I kind of hope so, because the idea that someone is actually threatening the new wife because the old wife said that the husband's got a big, very strange, but okay, that's what he said, his case. He also talks about how when she was in an interview with Page Six, which I believe was like the next day, she didn't apologize or anything. She pretty much just said the remark that it was a shame that this is what people chose to focus on rather than the umpteen other things that they talked about in the interview. I call BS on that because you knew when you said it what people were going to focus on because it's salacious. Of course they were going to focus on that. And that is why Marlon, when he was interviewing you, was kind of in the vein like, yeah, gimme, tell me more, tell me more. I saw the clip. Of course you knew nobody would care about pretty much anything that you talked about once you started talking about your husband's dong being so big that, you couldn't function. Come on. So he's suing her for 2 counts. 1, invasion of privacy, and 1 for unjust enrichment. The unjust enrichment is obvious. Basically, that it's just like it sounds. You are enriching yourself at my expense. You have invaded my privacy. You have put these things out about me that are embarrassing, things where I had a reasonable expectation of privacy, because that's important in the invasion of privacy count. And that in doing that, you enriched yourself. You got more streams, more views, more people talking to you, probably additional interviews and anything else that you would have gained from it in that regard, including additional views that people may be going back and watching. So he is asking the court, he's saying that he suffered severe emotional distress, pain and suffering, reputational harm, and again, her getting unjust enrichment from it. Again, not unusual. We've covered many civil cases, so when it comes to the damages, that's pretty much standard fare in terms of the language. And he is asking for at least $75,000 or more on each of those 2 counts to be fully determined at trial, because he does believe that she has been enriched at least that amount, if not more. And given the size of both her and Marlon's collective audiences, that's believable, not to mention any additional appearances that she may have gotten because of that. So we will definitely keep an eye on that. I have a feeling that one is probably going to settle out of court, because at the end of the day, there's really nothing that she can say that is going to make that defensible, especially when we talk about that whole reasonable expectation of privacy, because she didn't just talk about his member, but she took it a step further and talked about it in terms of what they did specifically, allegedly, did in their marriage to deal with the so-called problem. And so I think that takes it to another level, because there have been a few players, because locker room is what locker room is, and apparently there have been, at least what my research came up with, is that there were a couple of folks who said, I don't know if they gave their names, that says no secret that homie's got a big one. And I guess, if y'all walking around wild, wet, and free in the locker room, hello, any given Sunday, we saw the locker room scenes there, then technically it wouldn't be a secret, but I don't think the guys on the teams tend to go out and tell the world about everybody else's dongs. So it's going to be interesting, but I don't think that is going to go very far. I think apology, because the genie is out the bottle. You can't shove it back in, no pun intended. Apologies and perhaps pay. I mean, certainly if I was the wife, I'd be like, no, she gonna write a check, because she's not broke. This chick is paid. Okay, so done with that booger. Let's go on to next. This one is a quickie. Keep your booger quiet and stay classy. Let's talk about Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. They did what I call divorce done right. Love it when people handle it this way. Don't leave it up to someone. I say to my clients all the time, don't leave it up to someone who will never know you well enough to decide what's going to happen in your life, to your money, your house, your kids, and all of that. Now, if you have no choice but go to court. And of course, hire me if you're here in Virginia. But or my firm, if you're in the DMV, we've got folks barred in other places. But the bottom line is, if you got to go to court, go to court. I'm certainly not going to discourage you from doing that. But when you can work it out, you work it out. And this is the way you do it. Hello, Candy and Todd. This is the way you do it to try to keep people out of your business, because we know that all the news outlets and content creators, because everybody's figured it out by now, are looking for all the goods, and they want the mess, and they want the specifics, and of course they get lots of views off of seeing you fight, and the messy filings going back and forth, upping the ante. Again, Candy and Todd. But when you do it this way, I always love it. And I love when I see celebrities in particular do this, because it's how you do it. You file for divorce, and by the time the whiplash is over with everybody pontificating about why you got divorced, oh, what happened, this and that and the third, you announce that everything is settled. And that's what happened here. The couple announced, again, we're talking about Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, because I know I mentioned Candy and Todd a few times. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban announced their separation in September of 2025, and literally within 24 hours, Nicole actually filed the divorce. They finalized their divorce on January 6th. My God, that day keeps coming up. They finalized their divorce on January 6th. And the main things that we know is that Nicole has primary custody of their teen daughters. And their daughters are a lot older. There's something like 13 and 15, or 15 and 17. I know one is 15 for sure. I think maybe 15, 17, because they've been married for 19 years. I did not realize it was that long. Like, my God, I remember when they got married, but I digress. At any rate, she got primary custody, but this is the part that I love. There are multiple clauses related to privacy, including one that specifically deals with divulging intimate secrets. I love it. Now, and I'm not mad at it. Now, just from a person who handles divorce cases perspective, non-disparagement clauses are standard, even for us regular folks. Clauses about, especially especially when there's kids involved, about neither party saying anything inappropriate about the other party in front of the children. Those types of clauses, even talking about people's families, sharing information about businesses, all of that. So non-disparagement clauses, for those just catching on to what we do over here, that's the clauses about not saying bad things to or about people. That's not unusual. In fact, highly recommended, especially when there are kids involved, and certainly in cases, in situations like this, where you may be concerned about reputational harm, because you just don't need folks out there. But in this case, I loved the one about the intimate secrets, because at the end of the day, whatever eyes wide shut or keep your eyes open shenanigans you get up to in your bedroom, make sure they stay in the vault. There's really not much else being said about this divorce, and I'm not expecting there to be much, because we know, given where both of them were in their careers at the time, I'm sure the prenup was ironclad. And as far as money, he was at the top of his game, she was at the top of her game. Money is not an object between the two of them. Of course, one may have more than the other, but both of them are very, very well off, and in their mutual realms. Him, of course, in music, and she in her acting bag, and still working regularly. And also, she has the kids the vast majority of the time. I want to say it was something, when I looked, it was something like her having the kids 306 days and he having them 59, pretty much alternate weekends. Again, standard stuff, and given that they're teenagers, I'm sure that unless things are ugly between them, the kids will go back and forth however they want. And that's what tends to happen, especially even in my cases when I'm dealing with teenagers. So the final one, we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive on, although not as deep as I would have gone last week, since this case has been beat to death. But this, our final trade in the booger couple, this is a couple where we want the booger traded in, and it's getting to the point now where I'm not really sure who should be trading who, if they should trade each other. But we're going to go right now with her trading him in. And that is the exhaustive, from the public standpoint, long-suffering, and which is really crazy considering it's literally only been a week since we've known about this case of Cardi B and Stefon Diggs. And more importantly, the case involving Stefon Diggs, with Cardi B as sort of just the loud cheerleader on the side, although not really sure at any given time whether she's cheering him on or yelling at the crowd, because we're kind of getting a little bit of both. If her being in the rooms on, I think it's Threads. Which rooms is she in? No, it's not. Yeah, I think it's the Thread rooms, because there's, you could do that in a couple places. I know what Threads are. It's guys. But I just couldn't remember which chat she was in, but I think it's on Threads. At any rate, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of the story. For those of you who are, if you're watching this on YouTube, you may see me look down a little bit, because this is one I printed out instead of having on the screen next to me, because you see me looking to the side. That's because my notes are on a screen in front of me. So this is the story, and we're going to call this our disturbing little nightcap, because I am recording this late at night, even though it's going to premiere in the morning. This little not so, well, I guess it could be a fairy tale if it's one of the original Grimm's fairy tales. This situation started, as we know, probably a little over a year ago. Cardi B went public. Cardi B and Stefon Diggs went public with their relationship. Stefon Diggs, superstar football player, New England Patriots. And I say superstar because I figure if your contract's over $90 million, you're a superstar to somebody. So they went public with their relationship, and we saw it. It was big and splashy. We initially, when Cardi was on trial with the infamous case last year that she won, where she was pretending not to be pregnant, but she was pregnant. We saw the relationship during the spring when they went public with their relationship, but it became even more of something that we saw her doing interviews and talking about him, especially in the interview with Gayle King. I think it was Gayle King, when she finally admitted what the whole world had figured out based on her clothes when she was on trial last spring. The very, very funny trial, which one of these days we'll have to do some highlights from. At any rate, they had the baby in November of 2025. Stefon Diggs also apparently had at least 2, possibly even 3 other babies also born during 2025. One of those children looks to be around the same age, give or take a month or so, as the child that Cardi had. That would be the baby that he was with on Christmas Eve. So that's the background on this relationship, where, as she told, I believe it was Gayle King, that he offered to heal her, and she giggled and was like, okay. By the way, still not divorced from Offset, who was just photographed or videotaped in the bed with Selena Powell, but we'll just leave that trash in the bin where it belongs. Not necessarily calling Offset trash. I mean, that whole situation. I mean, how many times that we're going to see pictures of who Selena Powell takes pictures of in the bed. Now, I don't usually seek out these things, but apparently it's a thing with her that the whole world knows about. I did see the one with Snoop Dogg because, it's Snoop Dogg, so it's a little more mainstream. All right. Now, that's the background for the boogery. Now we are to the present, where it really gets ugly. Last week, once again, stuff coming out last week. So early last week, we found out that over the Christmas holidays, specifically around Christmas Eve, which may or may not account for why Diggs was not with Cardi on Christmas, although he also had another child with him on Christmas, so that may be part of it too. At any rate, news broke last week, so we're talking the first full week in January, because who knows when you guys are listening to this episode, that Diggs was arrested sometime around Christmas Eve for assault and battery and strangulation, excuse me, as with the alleged victim being his private chef. So, just going to summarize the criminal complaint, which I have right here, but read it a few times, enough that I could just give you a quick summary and my thoughts about it. And then we're going to get back to the trade-in, especially given some of the crazy that has occurred since all of this broke. So, going back to that first week in January, it broke that on or about what are we talking, around the 16th of December, the private chef that was hired, this is a woman, that was hired by Stefon Diggs during the summer to do all of his cooking through the entirety of the football season. So this person was going to be live-in, went to the police in the town, suburb right outside of Boston, where Stefon Diggs lives, and reported to the officer that Stefon Diggs came into her room in his home, and they got into it about an ongoing conflict that they had been having regarding him owing her money for her services. Now, apparently, at least what she alleges, is that she actually hadn't been to the house since around, she hadn't been to the house. Okay, wait a minute, let me get this right. Okay. She went to the police on December 16th. This event allegedly occurred on December 2nd. Okay. So she went to the house to gather some things because apparently there had been an ongoing conflict about him owing her money, which she provided text messages about. And she, of course, gave some background. I don't think, it's not necessary to dwell on it, but the bottom line is that the relationship between them had definitely deteriorated. She made some allegations about the timing of the payments, that they were supposed to be weekly, but they were paying her monthly, that there was a time when he had asked her to leave for a week without notice of it. I guess it wasn't in her contract, and not paying her for the time that she was going to be gone. Unfortunately, as I've said on other shows when I've talked about this, while that would have been the right thing to do, the gentlemanly thing to do, especially if it was not something she anticipated, and she lives with you, and so now she has to find accommodation somewhere else. The reality of it is that, as shitty as it may be, and however we may disagree with him not offering to do that, if it is not in your contract, he's not required to do that. So there's the legal obligation to do that versus the courtesy, the moral thing to do, the being a good boss thing to do, versus what I don't have to do if I just don't feel like it. And that was obviously where he was in it. Could argue back and forth about it, but if they have an actual contract and the contract doesn't address it, it is what it is. At least in that moment, it was. So at any rate, those are the types of things they had going on. And from what we can assume, that was allegedly in the beginning of November. From what we can assume based on the text messages and the fact that this whole conflict that led to the allegation she's making was about money, that at some point the situation had just broken down. Maybe it's when she came back and they hadn't paid her for the month of December, or perhaps there was even a dispute about some of the funds that I mentioned already. But the bottom line is the situation was messy, and clearly, and certainly based on what she alleges, needed to be over. Based on the text messages, that it definitely needed to be over, because all the cussing and the name calling and telling somebody what you are not going to do, and calling me a bitch, and all of those things, way out of hand. They were definitely talking to one another in a manner that had far surpassed what an employer-employee relationship is supposed to be. And granted, if someone's living with you, it may be far more personal. I've certainly gone away for the weekend with my girls. We had private chefs stay with us, and by day 2, we're like, girls, sit down and tell us about yourself and what have you. So I get it. And, and she was in residence, but there was something a little bit more to that. And and everybody has speculated about it. So we can just kind of leave it to the side eye that we're all clearly giving it. At any rate, she said that when he came in, of course, the ongoing conflict was addressed. And as she alleges, she says he slapped her or hit her, knocked her onto the bed. She tried to get out of the room, and he sort of wrapped his arm around her neck from behind, sort of in the crook of his elbow. Sounded, I guess, when I'm noodling it through in my head, sounded almost like a kind of a headlock from the back, sort of hooking it that way. And if you can see me, because I'm sitting in a black chair wearing a black shirt, look, I had a long day. At any rate, okay, so at any rate, he allegedly grabbed her that way. She said that there was at a moment she felt like she couldn't breathe or felt like she was going to pass out. Ultimately, he let her go. A few more words were exchanged, specifically her saying, "You still owe me money," which, I've got a smart ass mouth, and I could totally see myself doing that. You choke me out if you want to, but if you owe me money, as soon as you let me go, I'm probably going to say, MF, you still owe me money. And then hurry up and close the door and lock it. At that point, she alleges she didn't go back. And yeah, so several days had gone by. That allegedly happened on December, like I said, on or about, I want to say, she said, December 2nd. She went to the police on December 16th. I'm not drawing any negative conclusions from that. I am going to assume, especially given what happened even after she did the report, that she probably continued to negotiate at the very least with his assistant or his manager, not his management. There was a person involved that was kind of like sounded like his personal assistant or financial manager or something of that nature. It was a specific person that she was supposed to she was ultimately supposed to contact or she was dealing with as it relates to the money. So I would suspect that is probably what was going on in terms of her waiting to make a report. So again, I know there are people who are going to draw negative conclusions from that. I don't. And maybe after doing 20 plus years of criminal law and dealing with these types of cases, there isn't a whole lot that surprises me. And there's also no rhyme or reason to when or how or even why people ultimately call the police in these situations, or how many times the situations occur before they do file a report. Because as we know, in some situations, it's not the first time. At any rate, she gives this whole report to the officer. She tells him about the text messages and all the things. And the officer tells her right then and there, okay, I mean, we're prepared to do further investigation on this, possibly bring charges, the whole 9 yards. She tells him, you know what? I still don't think I'm ready for that yet. However, she did cooperate and provide, everything they asked her to provide. She provided the text messages. She filled out the rest of the paperwork, etc. And they stayed in touch. A few days later, when she touched base with the officer, she did mention a concern about hearing from someone that she thought was a girlfriend of his, pretty much saying, it doesn't have to go this way. In fact, where was that part of the page? Basically, if the person says it really doesn't have to go this way, here it is. You don't need to do this. It's not that big of a deal. And I was one of the few people, a la my short, that gave Cardi the benefit of the doubt, because most people just assumed it was Cardi. They were like, well, she has a distinctive voice. Of course, somebody would know her. My take on that was a little bit different, which is that it didn't necessarily have to be Cardi, because based on this man's baby history, it's reasonable to assume, we don't know for a fact, that Cardi may not have been his only girlfriend, and who would know that better than someone who lived in the same house with him? So she would know what any number of his girlfriends sounded like, including Cardi. Unfortunately, it does appear that there were conversations back and forth. Still not going to say that Cardi made this particular phone call, but there seems to be some communication between the two of them that Cardi admitted to, even going so far as to say that they talked on the phone every day, and that the chef, and I'm going to keep calling her that, I'm not going to use her name, that the chef never said anything to her about any of these shenanigans. Not really sure why they would be talking every day, but not my situation. As they say, not my monkey, not my circus. I'm gonna go with that, but that seems a little weird. At any rate, she didn't authorize the officer to bring the charges then. She told him that she was still trying to talk to his people. She did say that he had told her again to speak to the person who was in charge of his matters. I don't know how effective that person was, because she spoke to that person, and that person told her she would pay her or whatever. They would work the situation out, but they wanted her to sign an NDA. Now, this is where I've got to put on my attorney hat and my auntie hat at the same time. What the hell kind of bad business are you all doing? Now, granted, we all know, and hopefully those who didn't know learned, probably during the Diddy trial, that an NDA is not going to shield you from criminal behavior. But absent any criminal behavior, an NDA is still good for not having people talk about you, not talk about the shenanigans you have going on in your house. And again, we can assume there is some, or even, who you're associating with. Other people come into your house. You deal with other famous people. You have a famous girlfriend. You didn't have an NDA. You didn't have her sign an NDA when you hired her and had her move into your home for what was going to be at least 6 or 7 months, depending on if you make the playoffs. Now, if this is a new NDA that they wrote specifically related to any of the drama that occurred in whatever their relationship was in the month leading up to the blow up, who knows? But she didn't say that. At any rate, she didn't sign it. And within a day or two, and again, still didn't quite authorize the officer to do anything, but but the officer did say he would reach out to Stefon Diggs, which the officer did for 2 days, didn't get a call back. And finally, on December 23rd, not sure what happened in between. I guess we'll find out soon, unless things get resolved before then. On December 23rd, she called the officer first thing in the morning and was like, essentially, file the charges. Let's get it popping. So they filed the charges, and at least based on this, it looks like he was arrested around Christmas Eve. Yeah. So at any rate, he was brought to court, and he'll be arraigned in September. So, bonded out. I'm sorry, later in January. So this is going to all come up. So what's happened since then? Well, haven't heard much from Diggs. Of course, his attorney did the obligatory statement. My client is innocent of all charges or whatever. No problem there, because he's doing his job. That's what he's supposed to do. But the girlfriend windmilling in these streets. Cardi. First, The talking about her correspondence between she and the young lady, including even posting a text from her about the fact that he was about where the young lady basically said, I can't talk to you without the mediator. And, that was that. And subsequent to that, again, just going on and on. She's at it with Tasha K, who who accused her of witness tampering. And of course, we know the long history there. It pretty much any commentator who has talked about this, or social media personalities, she's in it with Jessie Woo about whether or not Jessie Woo said that her last child was a check baby. I mean, it is a mess. We also have seen her go to the game. She was on the field with Diggs. And of course, we still have the questions that keep and the information that keeps being tossed around about how many babies he had last year. One for sure, the paternity test, I think, made that clear in like November. We can assume maybe that was the baby he had on Christmas Eve, but there are at least 2 others. There are also other pending cases related to Stefon Diggs. There is the ex-girlfriend. I think she was probably the person immediately prior to Cardi, but then who the hell wasn't prior and maybe during. She alleges that he attacked her. However, that took an interesting turn because she made allegations against him, but she did not press any charges or file a civil suit right away. So he filed a civil suit against her because of based on her allegations. I think it was defamation at any rate. He filed a civil suit against her. So when he did that, she countersued and then, put in everything about her allegations. She has a friend who claims that she also witnessed at least the injuries, etc. And that case also allegedly involved strangling, or strangulation. There's also a case, I'm not sure if the young man officially filed the case or if he just made the allegations in the media about Stefon Diggs. So, and it's not good when even other players who know you are like, who's the player that you would least like your sister or I guess maybe someone you love to date or to be with. And damn near the whole team, or at least the people that they asked, were all like Stefon Diggs. But Cardi feels that he can heal her. But I guess when you're coming off of the craziness of Offset and all of that, even this kind of crazy seems like less crazy. I guess it just depends on whether or not you have to fight women in clubs or yell at people in hotel lobbies about the latest chick. So I suppose anything short of that, because those are the kinds of things that went on with Offset, is an improvement. I kind of feel like the aunties and the mommies in all of this, especially given the age of my 2 young adults, we want more for you, but we can't want more for you than you want for you. So I can joke around all day about, the collective we saying trade the booger, but girl, you love them. You like it. We love it. And at the end of the day, the case is about him. So however it turns out, we will definitely be following it. And I hope that you all enjoyed this episode about trading that booger in. I am still not going to talk about that dress, but he did at least give me a title, even if I question the fact that he even said it. And if you don't know who the he is, look it up. We're the smart people over here. That is the end of today's episode. Coming up, we are going to do an episode with some of the latest. You know, I like to pair things up. It's going to be a double header, dual deep dive. We are going to talk about the latest Tyler Perry allegation. We'll go over that complaint. We are also going to go over the Donnie McClurkin complaint. And there is also an additional case that we are going to talk about. I am looking at, I think my, I am sorry guys, if you are watching, if you're watching on YouTube, my screen may have blanked, but at any rate, there is an additional case that we're going to probably toss in there. So actually it's going to be a triple header on that one, because it's not just going to be, I totally forgotten because I had already started writing the episode. So it's not just going to be the Tyler Perry and Donnie McClurkin, but we also, and again, I'm going to stop clicking around on my screen because, as we saw, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, it froze a little bit. So I don't want the recording to get screwed up. I think even my computer is saying, Johnda, it is getting late, so stop the shenanigans. So I can tell you who the person's name is. Oh, Timothy Busfield. And Timothy Busfield has been around for a long time. He's been on a lot of stuff. I mean, for those of us going back to 80s television, Timothy Busfield has been on everything from 30-something to what's one of the more ones that he's been on? I'm going to tell you in a second, for those of you who, especially if you're not on the podcast. You're not watching it on YouTube. So I'm looking down just so that I can tell you some of the other things that Timothy is being put on. But while I'm pulling that up, just so that you have a frame of reference, he has been accused of some charges, and these charges are a little bit different. But he has been accused of some crimes as it relates to kids that worked with him on one of his most recent shows. So again, he goes all the way back, especially for those of us who love television dramas, because he was on 30-something. He was in The West Wing. He's actually a Best Supporting Actor winner. I thought so. He's a Best Supporting Actor winner for 30-something. And so he's had a lot of things going on in terms of his career. Well, now he is in for a big fight. So he's already, that case is already come up. It involves two young boys. I believe they are twins. And of course, the suit is, the case has been brought on their behalf, involving their parents. So it's a pretty messy case, but a little odd at the same time, as quite frankly, all three of the cases are. So we're definitely going to be talking about those. I expect to be talking about those towards the end of the week. Also look for more shorts on traders, because that has been a good time. I'm also going to do one more personal just to talk. We like to talk about the law here. We're going to talk about some insurance stuff, because one of the reasons why this episode was a little behind is because I was driving on Saturday with my kids, and we were hit by a hit and run driver. So, what do you do with that happen? How do you handle it, especially if you have some injuries? So, I'd love to talk to you about that, especially as I go through the process. So, we may do a couple of shorts regarding that. But at any rate, lots of stuff going on, and I look forward to getting into all of it with you. Continue to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support the show, I have also put the Cashapp and the Venmo in the comments. I appreciate all of your support, because it takes a lot to do what we do in putting this together. So we appreciate your time spent with us and your support. If you are listening to this, please like over there, thumbs up, give it 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast. We are on all platforms, and of course we are trying to build our YouTube family. So like, comment, and subscribe over here as well. So, and make sure you set the alarm, set your alarm, so you know whenever episodes are posted or whenever I go live, so that you can ask me questions live, especially when we get into the legal stuff. I love interacting with you. I'm going to head out now. So we're going to end the show the way I always do. Never forget, if you're thinking about it and you want to talk about it, chances are I'm thinking about it and I want to talk about it too. So let's be honest together. Bye-bye.